The message arrived like a whisper in the dark, intercepted by Earth's deep space listening stations. At first, it was just a faint signal, distorted by cosmic radiation. But as the computers cleaned up the transmission, the truth became clear. Aliens were coming. The Exaltar Dominion, an empire known for conquering weaker civilizations, had set their sights on Earth. They had wiped out planets before, reducing them to ash and taking whatever they wanted. To them, humanity was just another primitive species waiting to be subdued. But they were wrong. Inside a high-security military base buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, world leaders and top generals gathered. The atmosphere was tense. Satellite images showed an incoming fleet, larger than anything humanity had ever seen. Massive warships, each the size of cities, were moving through the void, their weapons primed. General Elias Carter, a hardened leader with sharp eyes and a steel-like presence, stood at the center of the war room. "This is it," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We've prepared for this moment. The question is, do we fight or do we kneel?" The answer was obvious. Earth had been preparing for war for years. The moment humanity realized they weren't alone, governments put aside their differences and focused on survival. Hidden orbital defense stations, advanced railgun satellites, and space-based missile platforms had been constructed in secret. A global alliance was formed, uniting humanity under one goal: never let Earth fall. Now, as the Exaltar fleet approached, the final preparations were in motion. "Sir," an officer reported, his hand shaking slightly as he stared at the holographic display. "Their ships will reach our defensive perimeter in 72 hours. Carter nodded. "Then it's time we send them a message." On the bridge of the Exaltar flagship Porthos, Overlord Verex watched the transmission from Earth with amusement. The human leader, a man named General Carter, stood tall, his expression unreadable. "This is your only warning," Carter said, his voice steady. "Leave now, or learn why no species has ever conquered us." Verex chuckled, shaking his head. "They think they can threaten us. How amusing." He turned to his commanders, all of them seated around the grand war table. "Tell me, how many of their ships do we estimate?" "Less than 500, Overlord," one of them replied. "Primitive designs, weak weapons, no real threat." Verex grinned, then crushed them. His fleet consisted of 5,000 warships, each equipped with plasma cannons capable of tearing through planets. The humans had no chance. It would be a swift and effortless conquest. Back on Earth, inside a secret command center, another transmission was being sent, not to the Exaltar, but to the hidden fleets orbiting the dark side of the moon. "Phase 1 is a go," a technician confirmed. Across the solar system, thousands of automated defense drones activated, their energy cores humming as they prepared for battle. The world's most brilliant minds have been working in the shadows for years, reverse engineering alien technology from long-forgotten crash sites. Humanity had adapted, evolving their defenses far beyond what anyone could imagine. The Exaltar believed Earth was weak because their spies had only seen what humanity allowed them to see. But they had no idea what was really waiting for them. 3 days later, as the Exaltar fleet reached the outer edge of the solar system, they were met with their first surprise. Hundreds of orbital defense platforms powered up, releasing high-velocity railgun slugs that traveled faster than any alien laser. The first wave of Exaltar scout ships exploded instantly, torn apart by the sheer force of impact. Then came the missiles, stealth-coated projectiles that evaded alien sensors, striking their capital ships before they could react. Inside the Exaltar flagship, alarms blared as the first reports of unexpected human resistance came flooding in. Overlord Verex stood in stunned silence, watching as dozens of his ships were torn apart. "Impossible," he roared. "They are supposed to be primitive." But the battle had only just begun. Humanity's last warning had been given, and now the real fight was about to start. The battle had begun, but not in the way the Exaltar expected. Inside the war room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Elias Carter stood with his arms crossed, watching the live battlefield feed. Giant holographic displays showed the outer defense perimeter of Earth's solar system, where the Exaltar fleet had taken heavy losses. The first wave of their scout ships had been destroyed instantly, and now their main forces were slowing down, confused. "Sir," an officer called out, "Exaltar ships are hesitating. They didn't expect this kind of resistance." Carter gave a small nod. "Good. They wanted the aliens to second-guess themselves. Fear could be as powerful as any weapon." The Exaltar had assumed humanity was weak, but in reality, Earth had spent decades preparing for an invasion. While the aliens had been conquering lesser species, humans had been learning, adapting to threats beyond their world. Now, that preparation was paying off. Aboard the Exaltar flagship Porthos, Overlord Verex was furious. He paced back and forth on the command deck, his eyes locked on the battle reports. This was not how things were supposed to go. "Explain this," he snapped at his tactical officer. "How is it possible that a primitive species has taken down 50 of our warships?" The officer hesitated, then pointed at the data screen. "Their weapons, they're not as primitive as we believed. Their projectiles move at speeds even our shields struggle to stop, and their missiles are invisible to our scanners until impact." Verex slammed his fist against the console. Invisible missiles, railgun projectiles moving faster than plasma weapons. This was not the technology of a weak species. "Have they received help from another empire?" he demanded. "No evidence of that, Overlord," the officer answered. "These weapons, they are human-made." That answer was even worse. Back on Earth, in an underground laboratory, Dr. Anaya Patel, one of Earth's top scientists, was monitoring the weapons in action. The AI-driven stealth missiles were hitting their targets with perfect precision, tearing through Exaltar warships before they could react. "Their fleet is slowing down," an assistant reported. "They're afraid." Patel nodded. "They should be." She turned her attention to the real secret weapon, Project Omega. The Exaltar had no idea that Earth's space weapons were just the first layer of defense. The true power of humanity lay not in brute force, but in adaptability and strategy. Unlike other civilizations that the Exaltar had conquered, humanity didn't just fight wars, they evolved during them. She sent a message to the command center. "Project Omega is ready for activation." In the battlefield, the Exaltar finally launched their counterattack. Dozens of alien warships rushed forward, their plasma cannons firing massive energy beams towards Earth's defenses. Space trembled with the force of their attack. Some human satellites were hit, exploding into fireballs. But Earth's AI defense systems responded instantly. Railguns locked onto the sources of enemy fire and struck back before the Exaltar could react. One after another, Exaltar warships exploded into debris, shocking their commanders. On the flagship Porthos, Verex could no longer hide his rage. "Enough," he growled. "Prepare for a full-scale ground invasion. I want their planet under my control." His officers looked nervous. "But Overlord, if they have such advanced orbital defenses, their ground forces." Verex slammed his clawed fist on the table. "Humans are weak in close combat. Our warriors will crush them." He refused to believe that a race as small and fragile as humans could stand against the elite Exaltar soldiers. "Send in the dropships," he ordered. "By tomorrow, Earth will kneel." On Earth, the final phase begins. Inside the war room, an alarm blared. "General, we have incoming enemy dropships." Carter turned to the screen, seeing thousands of Exaltar landing crafts heading toward Earth's surface. His expression remained calm. "So they finally decided to get their hands dirty. Should we engage?" one of the officers asked. Carter exhaled, then spoke into the microphone connected to all defense units across the planet. "Phase 2 is a go. All over the world, hidden weapons activated." Massive energy shields rose over major cities. Anti-air defense turrets emerged from underground silos, firing skyward, ripping alien ships apart before they could land. But that wasn't all. Beneath the surface, elite human soldiers, trained for extraterrestrial combat, were waiting. Unlike the Xaltar, who relied on brute strength, humans had technology, tactics, and experience in warfare that no other species had. The Xaltar thought they were invading a weak planet, but in reality they were walking straight into a trap. Aboard the Xaltar flagship, Verex watched in horror as hundreds of his landing crafts were shot down before they could even touch the ground. Those that did land were immediately ambushed by well-prepared human forces. Xaltar soldiers, some of the fiercest warriors in the galaxy, were being outmaneuvered and taken down one by one. Verex's confidence began to crack. This isn't possible," he whispered. Humanity wasn't just defending itself, it was hunting its invaders. Thousands of Xaltar dropships descended toward Earth, cutting through the planet's atmosphere like a storm of fire. Their mission was simple: crush humanity's defenses, seize control, and declare victory. Overlord Verex had ordered a full-scale ground assault, believing that humans could not match his warriors in direct combat. But he was wrong. The trap is sprung. From his command center, General Elias Carter watched the invasion unfold. Red markers on the holographic map showed where enemy forces were landing. He could hear the tension in the voices of his officers. "They're targeting major cities," one reported. "New York, London, Moscow, Tokyo." Carter didn't flinch. "Let them land," he said calmly. The officers glanced at each other, uncertain. Letting the enemy reach the surface, wasn't that too risky? But Carter knew exactly what he was doing. Earth was ready. As the alien ships neared the ground, massive energy barriers activated, shielding key cities. The aliens who had targeted those areas slammed into invisible walls, their ships exploding on impact. For the ones who managed to land outside the shields, a new nightmare awaited them. First contact on the ground. In the ruins of an abandoned city, Xaltar warriors stepped onto human soil for the first time. Towering, armored, and bred for war, they expected a swift and easy conquest. Instead, they found silence. No terrified humans running in the streets. No desperate armies waiting to surrender. Just empty buildings and eerie stillness. Then, the first shot rang out. A railgun sniper, hidden on a rooftop, took out the Xaltar squad leader in a single precise shot. His massive body crumpled to the ground, shocking the other warriors. Before they could react, the human ambush began. Explosions erupted from alleyways. Autonomous drones launched from rooftops, firing smart tracking bullets. EMP mines disabled Xaltar energy shields, and from the shadows, elite human soldiers emerged, striking fast and disappearing before the aliens could fight back. The Xaltar had expected a battlefield. What they got was a hunting ground, and they were the prey. The Xaltar are overwhelmed. Aboard the Xaltar flagship Porthos, Overlord Verex stared at the battle reports in disbelief. This is impossible," he muttered. His warriors were among the most feared in the galaxy. They had crushed countless civilizations before. But now, they were the ones being hunted. "Humans, they don't fight like other species," one of his generals stammered. "They don't line up in formations. They don't rely on brute force. They adapt." Verex finished, realization dawning on him. The humans had set traps, missiled their enemies, and turned the battlefield into their advantage. And worst of all, they weren't just defending themselves. They were counterattacking. Humanity strikes back. In the outskirts of Tokyo, an elite Xaltar battalion prepared to storm the city. Their plan was simple: overpower human resistance and take control. But before they could move, something massive came crashing down from the sky. It was a Titan-class mech, one of humanity's most advanced war machines, standing over 40 feet tall, armed with heavy plasma cannons and guided missile launchers. It was a walking fortress. The Exaltar opened fire, but their weapons barely scratched its armor. The mech's cannons roared, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. Zaltar warriors scattered in terror as the machine wiped out their ranks in seconds. And then, human shock troopers arrived, heavily armed, wearing advanced exosuits that enhanced their speed and strength. They weren't just soldiers, they were hunters. The Exaltar, for the first time in their history, were running from a fight, a desperate retreat. On board the Vorthus, Varix clenched his fists. His invasion was falling apart. His forces had lost thousands of soldiers. Cities remained untouched, and humans had barely suffered any casualties. He had miscalculated, badly. But he wasn't ready to surrender. "Pull back the ground forces," he ordered, his voice tight with rage. "Regroup the fleet. We'll burn their planet from orbit." His commanders hesitated. "Overlord, their planetary defenses are still active. If we do it," Varix roared. The humans had embarrassed him, but he would still have his victory. If he couldn't conquer Earth, he would destroy it. Humanity's final move. In the war room, Carter watched as the Exaltar forces began retreating. The aliens had underestimated humanity, and now they were trying to cut their losses. But Carter had no intention of letting them escape so easily. "They're falling back," an officer reported. "Orders, sir." Carter turned to his team and gave a simple command. "Activate Project Omega." All across space, hidden stealth warships powered up. They had remained cloaked throughout the battle, waiting for this exact moment. Now, as the Exaltar fleet regrouped, believing they had a chance to escape, humanity sprang the final trap. Hundreds of missiles launched from stealth ships, heading straight for the Exaltar command vessels. At the same time, advanced hacker teams infiltrated enemy systems, shutting down their shields and weapons. Varix's fleet, already weakened, was now completely defenseless. The moment of truth. The once invincible Exaltar Dominion had never suffered such a defeat. For the first time, they weren't the hunters, they were the hunted. And as explosions lit up the darkness of space, Overlord Varix finally realized the terrible truth. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were sending a message to the entire galaxy. Never come for us again. Overlord Varix had expected an easy victory. Land on Earth, crush its defenses, and claim the planet. Instead, his army was being wiped out, his warships were trapped, and his fleet was on the verge of collapse. Now he had only one option left: burn Earth from orbit. Inside the command bridge of the Exaltar flagship Porthos, Varix's hands trembled with fury. He watched the battle reports, his warriors being slaughtered by human forces. Entire battalions had gone missing in the ruins of human cities, while others were ambushed before they could react. "This war should have been over by now," he growled. "How is this happening?" One of his officers, hesitant to speak, finally answered, "Overlord, humans are not like the others. They don't just defend, they attack, they adapt, and worse, they learn." Varix clenched his fists. "Then we will teach them fear. Prepare the orbital bombardment. We will turn their cities to ashes." The officers hesitated. "Overlord, our fleet is still under attack. If we—" "I don't care." Varix roared. "Fire everything." Earth's last line of defense. In the underground command bunker, General Elias Carter knew what was coming. The Exaltar had failed on the ground, and now they would try to wipe out humanity from above. His officers were tense as red warning lights flashed across the war room. "Enemy ships are moving into bombardment positions," one of them reported. Carter remained calm. "They're going to fire." "Yes, sir. If they hit, we'll lose entire cities." Carter exhaled. "Then let's make sure they don't." He turned to his team. "Activate the Sentinel network." Across the planet, massive underground anti-orbital railguns came online, hidden inside mountains, beneath the ocean, and within deep space stations. These weapons had never been used before, because no one had ever dared attack Earth like this. Now, they were humanity's last hope. Targets locked. An officer confirmed. Awaiting your command, sir. Carter's voice was steady. Fire. The counterattack. In orbit, Zaltar warships prepared to unleash planet-destroying firepower. But before they could fire, humanity struck first. From Earth's surface, dozens of massive energy beams shot into space, targeting the Zaltar fleet with perfect accuracy. The first enemy battleship exploded instantly, torn apart by the sheer force of the blast. Then another. And another. Within seconds, the Zaltar fleet was in chaos. On the Vorthus, alarms screamed as the ship rocked from a near miss. Overlord Verex grabbed the console, his eyes widening in disbelief. What? What is this? He roared. Humans. They have planetary defenses we never detected. An officer stammered. Verex felt a chill run through his body. How had they never seen this coming? We can't hold this position. Another officer yelled. We have to fall back. Verex refused to retreat. He still had one final plan. The Zaltar's last attempt. Verex's voice was filled with rage. If we cannot destroy their cities, then we will kill their leaders. Send in our shadow hunters. Let them strike at the heart of their command. The shadow hunters were the Zaltar's most elite warriors, invisible assassins, deadly and unstoppable. They would infiltrate Earth's bunkers, kill the human leaders, and cripple their strategy. Deploy them immediately, Verex ordered. The assassins arrive. In the underground bunker, alarms blared again. Sir, unidentified signals, inside the facility. Carter didn't hesitate. Security teams, on high alert. They're coming for us. The lights flickered, and a cold wind rushed through the room. Then they appeared. Tall, shadowy figures emerged from thin air, their advanced cloaking technology failing as they attacked. The Zaltar assassins had arrived. They moved fast, too fast for normal soldiers to react. With razor-sharp blades and deadly plasma rifles, they struck at the human officers, taking down guards in an instant. But then, gunfire erupted. The assassins were not alone in the dark. Waiting for them, hidden behind reinforced walls and automated turrets, were human special forces. Unlike the Zaltar, humans knew how to fight in close quarters. The battle inside the bunker was brutal. The assassins were deadly, but humans had one key advantage. They fought together. Carter grabbed his sidearm and fired, hitting one of the Zaltar warriors in the head. The alien fell, eyes wide in shock. More assassins tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. One by one, they were hunted down. Within minutes, the Zaltar's last hope had failed. The fall of the Zaltar fleet, with their assassins dead and their warships burning. The Zaltar were finally out of options. Overlord, we must retreat. One of Verex's commanders begged. Verex, trembling with fury, could barely speak. No, we can still. But he knew the truth. Humanity had won. If they stayed any longer, they would be completely wiped out. Verex's hands curled into fists. He had never lost a war before, but now he had no choice. Order a retreat, he whispered. Get us out of here. Across the battlefield, Zaltar ships turned and fled. The once mighty fleet ran for its life, leaving behind thousands of their dead. The war was over, and humanity stood victorious. Humanity's final warning. As the last Zaltar warship disappeared into the void, General Carter stood in the war room, watching them go. Sir, should we pursue them? An officer asked. Carter shook his head. No. Let them run, but send out a message. He turned to the holographic screen, broadcasting to every surviving Zaltar ship and to the rest of the galaxy. His words were calm, but final. This was your only warning. Never return. If you do, we will not show mercy. The message was sent, and across the stars, humanity's name would never be forgotten. The Exaltar had lost. Their mighty fleet, which once spread fear across the galaxy, had been broken and forced to flee. Their elite warriors, believed to be unstoppable, had been defeated on Earth's soil. Their assassins failed, their warships destroyed, and their reputation shattered. For the first time in history, an empire that conquered hundreds of worlds had been brought to its knees by a single planet, Earth. But for humanity, the war was not over yet. Overlord Verex had retreated, but he was still out there. The Exaltar could regroup, rebuild, and one day return. Carter knew that couldn't be allowed. Humanity had to take the fight to them. The decision to strike back. Inside the underground command bunker, General Elias Carter stood at the war table, his expression unreadable. Around him, military leaders from across the world debated their next move. "They're running," said one general. "We should let them go." "They won't stay gone for long," countered another. "The Exaltar don't forget. If we don't finish this, they'll return stronger." Carter exhaled, his gaze locked on the holographic map of the Exaltar retreat path. The aliens were heading toward a hidden outpost, a place where they could regroup. He made his decision. "We take the war to them," Carter said firmly. "No more waiting. No more defense. It's time for humanity to strike back." A moment of silence filled the room. Then, one by one, the commanders nodded in agreement. The secret human fleet. The Exaltar believed they were the only ones with spacefaring warships. They thought humanity was still limited to its planet, barely capable of interstellar travel. They were wrong. For decades, Earth's greatest minds have been preparing in secret, using reverse-engineered alien technology from long-forgotten crash sites. Humanity had built something no one expected, a hidden space fleet, armed and ready for war. Now, it was time to reveal it. The invasion of the Exaltar outpost. As the Exaltar limped toward their hidden outpost in deep space, Overlord Verex sat in silence, his claws digging into his throne. He could still hear the screams of his warriors, still see the destruction of his fleet. He had never suffered humiliation like this, but he was still alive. "We will rebuild," he told himself. "We will return stronger." But just as he thought that, alarms rang through the command center. "Overlord," an officer shouted. "Ships, human ships, coming out of hyperspace." Verex's blood ran cold. On the screen, hundreds of human warships emerged from the darkness of space, engines roaring, weapons locked. They had followed the Exaltar back to their own territory. The hunters had become the hunted. The battle above the Exaltar world. The first human missiles struck before the Exaltar could react. Their damaged fleet had no chance. The moment they raised shields, human hackers disabled them remotely. Explosions lit up the void, and one by one, the Exaltar warships fell like dying stars. Inside the human flagship, the UH Titan, General Carter stood at the bridge, watching the battle unfold. His soldiers were not just fighting, they were delivering a message. This was not an attack of conquest. This was a warning. Never attack Earth again. The final stand of Overlord Verex. With his warships destroyed, Verex had only one option left. Fight to the death. "Prepare all weapons," he snarled. "If we fall, we take as many of them as we can." But as his warriors readied for battle, something unexpected happened. A human transmission came through. Verex glared at the screen. "Put it through." General Carter appeared before him, his face calm, but his eyes cold. "You attacked our world," Carter said. "You thought we were weak. Now you see the truth." Verex hissed. "I see nothing but savages." Whoa. Silence. Carter's voice was like steel. "Listen carefully. We are not conquerors. We are not here to destroy you. But if you ever set foot in our space again," he leaned forward, "we will erase you from existence." Verex froze. In his heart, he knew Carter wasn't bluffing. Humanity had proven they were not to be underestimated. And for the first time in his life, Overlord Varix did something he had never done before. He surrendered. Humanity's name echoes across the galaxy. The war was over. The Exaltar Dominion, once feared across the stars, had been defeated. Word of the battle spread across the galaxy, reaching distant civilizations. Species that once feared the Exaltar now whispered a new name with both awe and caution. Humanity. They were not invaders. They were not conquerors. But they were not prey. Any species that threatened them would face the same fate as the Exaltar. The final warning. As the last human warships turned back toward Earth, Carter gave one final order. Send a message to the galaxy. A simple transmission was broadcasted across the stars, translated into every known language. We are humanity. We do not seek war. But if war comes to us, we will end it. This is your only warning. And with that, humanity returned home, victorious, stronger, and more feared than ever before. The aftermath of humanity's victory was a silence that echoed across the stars. The Exaltar, once a proud and ruthless empire, now found themselves broken and humiliated. Their fleet had been destroyed, their warriors had been defeated, and their leader, Overlord Varix, was now left with no choice but to face the consequences of his miscalculation. On the bridge of the Exaltar flagship Forthus, Varix stood still, staring out at the remnants of his fleet. The damage was immense. Half of his ships were reduced to debris, and those that remained were severely crippled. The thought of facing his own people with such a crushing defeat filled him with dread. "This cannot be happening," Varix muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. "We were invincible. We were supposed to be the dominant species." But the truth was undeniable. Humanity had fought back with a force and intelligence the Exaltar had never expected. Varix could feel the weight of his failure pressing down on him. The humans were not just survivors. They were warriors, and worse still, they had outsmarted the Exaltar at every turn. A fractured empire. Back on Exaltar homeworld, a council of the Empire's most influential leaders was in session. A once proud group of powerful beings, now sitting in shame, with their eyes fixed on the screen showing the wreckage of their fleet. "We were wrong to underestimate them," one of the council members said, his voice trembling. "We have no fleet left, no way to retaliate." Another leader growled, "We can't simply surrender. The shame would be unbearable. Our warriors would lose all faith in us." Varix's chief general, a fierce Exaltar named Narak, stood tall. His armor, scratched and dented from the previous battle, seemed to carry the weight of defeat. "Overlord, we must decide. The humans have given us a chance to negotiate, but we must act quickly. If we don't, they will finish us off." The council was divided. Some argued for retreating deeper into space, hoping to regroup and rebuild. Others, however, saw no point in fighting a losing battle. They knew that humanity had now set a clear line in the sand. The humans would not let them come back. Ever. Varix remained silent, staring at the shattered remains of his fleet. His mind raced. What could he do now? Was there still hope for his people? Or had the Exaltar Empire truly come to an end? Humanity's unyielding strength. Back on Earth, General Elias Carter watched the universe's response to their victory. The message they had sent to the galaxy had been simple. "This is your only warning." But the truth was clear. Humanity wasn't just sending a warning to the Exaltar. It was sending a message to anyone who would dare to threaten them. In the United Nations War Room, Carter stood before the world's leaders, who had gathered to discuss the aftermath of the war. "We've won, but this is just the beginning," Carter said, his voice calm and clear. "We have shown the galaxy what humanity can do when we fight together, but we must stay vigilant. We cannot afford to let our guard down." The room nodded in agreement. Humanity had just proven that they were no longer the helpless species many had once thought them to be. They had fought, they had won, and now the universe was forced to acknowledge their strength. "Do you think the Exaltar will ever come back?" one of the leaders asked. Carter thought for a moment. Not in the same way. The Exaltar are broken. They've seen our power, and they know we'll stop at nothing to protect our planet. But we've made it clear, we will fight to protect what is ours. Verex's final choice. Meanwhile, aboard the Vorthus, Verex's mind was made up. After much contemplation and pressure from his own council, he gave the order. Send the transmission. We will open talks with the humans. We have no other choice. A tense silence followed as the message was sent. It was brief but clear. We are prepared to discuss terms. Surrender is our only option. The Exaltar were defeated. Their empire was in ruins, their fleets in tatters, and their leader now forced to beg for mercy. It was a moment that would change the course of history for both the Exaltar and humanity. Humanity's response. The human leadership watched the message with mixed emotions. They had won, but the thought of accepting the Exaltar's surrender was still a difficult one. General Carter was the first to speak. We've beaten them, but we must decide how to proceed. This isn't just about saving Earth anymore. We've proven that humanity can hold its own. We now have the power to change the course of the galaxy. There was a long pause as the world's leaders deliberated. The decision wasn't easy. Should they spare the Exaltar? Should they demand their complete surrender and hold them accountable for their invasion? Or should they push for complete annihilation, ensuring that no such threat would ever emerge again? Carter's voice broke the silence. We will offer them terms, but the moment they break those terms, we will strike without hesitation. The room nodded in agreement. Humanity had shown strength, but they would show mercy only on their own terms. The galaxy watches. The Exaltar had made their choice, and now they would face humanity's judgment. In the aftermath of the invasion, other species in the galaxy watched carefully. The message from Earth was loud and clear. Humanity wasn't interested in ruling the stars, but they would never be slaves again. They would not bow to any invader, and they would stand together as one united force. From that day on, no one would dare underestimate the power of humanity. The Exaltar had surrendered, and the galaxy was watching. For the first time in history, a species that had once been considered the most dominant force in the universe was now forced to kneel before humanity. The events of the past few weeks had shaken the foundations of the Exaltar dominion, and there was a sense of uncertainty among the galaxy's other species. The Exaltar had been confident, believing no one could stand in their way. But humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and determination had proved them wrong. The humans had not only defended their planet, they had taken the fight to the Exaltar, forcing them to surrender and opening the door for negotiations. A new era of diplomacy. On Earth, General Elias Carter stood in the war room, surrounded by Earth's leaders and military advisors. The battle was over, but the consequences of the war would be felt across the galaxy. The message from the Exaltar had been received, and now it was time for humanity to decide the fate of the once feared empire. We've won, Carter said, his voice steady. But the real question is, what do we do now? The room fell silent. They had defeated the Exaltar, but their empire was vast. The Exaltar had conquered countless worlds and enslaved many species. Now that they were on their knees, Earth had the power to shape the future of the galaxy. The choices ahead were vast, and they would determine whether humanity would become the guardians of peace or simply a new dominant force in the stars. Do we destroy them completely? One leader asked, his voice filled with concern. They've been a threat for far too long. If we let them live, what's to stop them from coming back? Carter exhaled deeply. We've proven our strength, but we're not here to wipe them out completely. We can't forget who we are. We have the power to end them, but we're offering them a chance to rebuild. Under strict terms. They're not the same Exaltar they were before. We'll never let them forget this lesson, another leader added. But they need to know that we're not doing this out of revenge. It's a warning to anyone who thinks they can take advantage of humanity. Humanity's terms for the Exaltar. The human delegation sent a message back to the Xaltar. The terms for peace. The Xaltar were to agree to complete disarmament, with no ability to wage war ever again. Their fleet would be dismantled, their weapons destroyed, and their leaders would be held accountable for the invasion. However, humanity offered one important concession. They would allow the Xaltar to retain their autonomy, but only under Earth's watchful eye. Any attempt to rebuild their military would be met with immediate consequences. The terms were firm, but fair. Humanity wasn't out for conquest. They had no desire to rule over another species, but they had made it clear that Earth would not tolerate aggression. The Xaltar would either learn to live in peace or face the absolute consequences. A galaxy shaken. The Xaltar accepted the terms, though with bitterness and reluctance. Overlord Verex, still alive but broken, was forced to address his people. The once proud Xaltar warriors stood before their leader, awaiting his decision. They were a people defeated, their power shattered by a species they had once thought beneath them. "We have been humbled," Verex said, his voice echoing through the halls of the Xaltar palace. "We are not the conquerors we once believed we were. The humans have proven their strength, and we must accept that we will never be the same again. We have no choice but to comply with their terms. But remember this, my people, we have learned that no one is invincible, and this humiliation will not be the end of us." The Xaltar were forced to submit to humanity's rules, but the seeds of rebellion were planted. While the humans had won this war, the Xaltar would not forget this defeat. They would wait for a time when they could rebuild and strike again. But for now, they were broken. The new balance of power. The terms were signed, and the galaxy began to settle into a new balance of power. Humanity had emerged victorious, and for the first time, the universe knew that Earth was not just a planet of weaklings. It was a force to be reckoned with. Other species, once too afraid to stand against the Xaltar, now turned their gaze toward Earth with respect and caution. Some saw humanity as potential allies, others as a new force to fear. But one thing was clear: no one would ever again think of humans as anything less than equals in the galactic community. General Carter addressed the leaders of Earth's united military forces. "This victory is only the beginning," he said. "We have shown that humanity is capable of great things, but we must remain vigilant. Our strength is not just in our weapons, but in our unity. The galaxy is watching us now, and we must show them that we are not only strong, we are just." Humanity's victory over the Xaltar was not about revenge. It wasn't about claiming power. It was about sending a clear message. Earth would not be subjugated again, and humanity was ready to stand together in the face of any threat. A new future for the stars. As the years passed, humanity became a leader in galactic diplomacy. The Xaltar, once conquerors of many worlds, slowly adapted to their new role as a peaceful species under Earth's watch. They were forced to work alongside other civilizations, rebuilding their empire in a way that would never again threaten the galaxy. The message humanity had sent resonated through the stars. "We stand ready for you, not as conquerors, but as defenders of their planet, their values, and their future." Humanity had shown that they would not only survive but thrive in the galaxy, and anyone who dared to challenge them would face the consequences. For the Xaltar and any other species watching, the warning was clear: humanity would never be a victim again. The galaxy would now know that Earth was not a place to be conquered, but a force that stood ready to protect its people and the peace they had fought so hard to achieve.